Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 479, Positive Self-Talk with Lauren Plunkett.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk with Lauren Plunkett, a remarkable dietitian who has harnessed the power of plant-based lifestyle to manage her type 1 diabetes, transform her relationships with food, and do it for others. Lauren shares her inspiring journey, discusses how she saw her insulin amounts decrease and become more conscious of the food system after adopting a plant-based diet. We delve into the pivotal role of self-talk and how it affects our eating habits and the importance of facing our past to pave the way for a healthier future.
Lauren is a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist working nationally as a health educator. She specializes in plant-based nutrition for prevention and improvement of chronic conditions. Lauren is a public speaker, indoor cycling instructor, and author of the award-winning book, Type 1 Determination. Lauren has lived with type 1 diabetes for nearly 3 decades and provides knowledge from the perspective of the patient and healthcare professional at the same time. She is a fierce advocate for healthy lifestyle practices. Stay tuned for valuable insights and tips on nurturing a better relationship with food in this enlightening conversation with Lauren. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, now it's more important than ever to stay close and connected to us as we're going to be making some changes here at Plant Trainers. So please head over to planttrainers.com and get our plant-based comfort foods recipe book for free. That's a $14.99 value just by signing up for our newsletter so that you can know what changes are, because we want to make sure that we stay in touch.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
Just 2 weeks ago, I was down in Texas at a cellular health conference, and it was so amazing being with like-minded people, learning about cellular rejuvenation, DNA, RNA, all of these amazing things. Just being with like-minded people is amazing, and I'm grateful that I had that experience, and grateful Adam stayed home to take care of the house.
I'm grateful for the fall season being a time where I start a new volleyball team and working with new young athletes, developing them into a solid team.
All right, Lauren Plunkett, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our chat.
I'm excited too. People on YouTube might be noticing that Adam's not sitting next to me today. People on podcast just listening, you'll hear he's not here today. Everything's cool. Everything's good. But we already have to reschedule with Lauren and didn't want to do it again. So here we are, 2 girls hanging out. And Lauren, let's start off. You tell us how you found the plant-based lifestyle and what changed for you along the way.
Ooh, lots of things. And they continue to change, I think. But yeah, I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed at 11, and it'll be 30 years next month for my diaversary, as they sometimes call it. But I can't remember the original date, nor can my parents. We say sometime before Halloween, of course, a kid gets diagnosed with type 1 and life changes. And so through a series of all kinds of things going on, the way that I grew up with nutrition, I was speaking grams and carbohydrates before I could drive. So you can imagine this was kind of the development of my story. And in fact, I published a book about all of that. And then you get older, you leave high school, you start adulting, and you figure out all of the ways to get yourself in trouble with your health. And I kind of had a number of awakenings there with the fork in the road. There wasn't like a negotiation. It was talking to me like, Lauren, you're either going to get healthier or you're not. That's it. So figure it out. And a few more years started to go by, and realizing that my nutrition was the core of the changes that I really needed to make, because nutrition it's a major cornerstone of having diabetes, of life with diabetes, of how you can thrive with diabetes or not. And I wanted to thrive. So there was some instinct there of all the things that I had learned, which was really a lot of carbohydrate shaming. And I wanted to change that. And this is the language that I can use to describe it now. But when I was in my 20s, I wasn't a dietitian yet. So I wasn't really, speaking that type of positive language. I just knew something needed to change. So started bringing in more veggies, just knowing that I should probably eat these more things. I was doing the should all the time without really a lot of reason to it or a lot of science behind it. It just felt right. But more or less overnight, I stopped eating meat because I knew that I liked my animals better alive. Just period. I felt like I reconnected with my childhood of knowing that I was such a sensitive person towards animals, always have been. And that was just a common sense of, I want to wake up to the food system just a little bit. And there's no better proof for someone that plant-based nutrition is beneficial, like for someone who doesn't make insulin. Because I'm monitoring my blood glucose all the time, and I could feel the changes, but I had evidence of the changes and what was going on with my glucose values. And the big one was my blood sugar was dropping like crazy. I was going with low blood sugars all the time, didn't know why, reducing my insulin needs, and then had more energy than I knew what to do with, like a lot of people say when they start eating more plants and fiber and nutrients. So I started to be more active, which was a double whammy for sensitizing my body to insulin. So I needed less and less. Go to my doctor, and she kind of is like, well, just keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to adjust your insulin more. So after a bit of this going on, within a couple of months, I had dropped my insulin needs by about 50%. And I was officially high fiber vegetarian. And then that evolved into the 100% vegan lifestyle in pretty much every which way you can think possible as a conscious consumer. But then I went to school to become a dietitian, realizing that I needed to know the science behind this. Doesn't this exist? And that's where then the pace really picked up for me and into what my career is now.
Wow. So it was self-discovery and self-exploratory that really brought you through that path of life. When you went completely plant-based, did that change the insulin levels even more, or did it more or less stay the same?
It did. And I think I was so ready for changes to continuously happen. I mean, that is kind of the life with diabetes. If you're changing your insulin, the type of insulin you're using, you've got fast acting, you've got long acting. The technology really picked up in the last 20 years with continuous glucose monitoring and the devices that we've got going. So there was always this awareness of, I'm ready to adjust because I've had to do so much adjusting. But as I became very consciously dairy-free, that is what took things to the next level. I think that for me, and for a lot of people that are tapping into plant-based and potentially vegan, it's, if you're not ready to go all or nothing, do what you're comfortable with, but explore the option of what you may be interested in going further into a vegan lifestyle. And that's kind of the pace that I took it at. But being conscious of the food system is a shock to the soul. I think once you start to learn more about where food comes from, and that was really what got me, was the honest perspective of, if I want to drink milk, can I milk my own cow? Can I take its baby and sell it off? I couldn't do it. I could not do that. I couldn't live that life, and I won't judge someone that can. However, if it's affecting my health, again, I've got proof because I'm always monitoring something. So I've got this anecdotal evidence for, here's what's happening here. Here's where I was before the cheese left my body. So over the course of a month or so, I think it was this gradual process to dairy-free. And what was so noticeable was the feeling in my body that was that anti-inflammatory healing process of getting that stuff out of my system that I didn't really know how much it was affecting us, which is so common for people who consume dairy and they think it's bugging them. But until they really knock it out, then they have the proof they know. And it's a feeling more than anything else. So the feeling of me feeling lighter, my face changed. There was a puffiness that kind of changed. I think it was also a rate of absorption, certainly in the gut. Now that, once I started learning the science, potentially what was going on here, and just improving my ability to absorb nutrients, to become more insulin sensitive. And dairy was absolutely getting in the way of my goal to become a more efficient human being, which then made diabetes easier to live with. It was like blinking lights were just going off everywhere. So that was really the motivation to stick to it.
Ditching the dairy and really being in tune with your body and feeling how you feel different and seeing how you look different, and probably having a clearer mind and being able to do more in your day and exercise better and study harder or help more people without the burnout. It's not just, oh, I feel lighter. It's what does that ripple effect bring in a positive light?
Yeah, you can kind of look at, all the systems of the body, all the layers of who we are. And something in diabetes that happens that I talk quite a bit about is this interconnected health, that what is good for diabetes is good for the whole system. So we need to quit treating blood glucose like it's a separate entity. Like go ahead, cut all the carbs and cut all the good things out of your diet so you can have this blood sugar value that never moves. That isn't the goal. It's never been the goal, but somehow that gets emphasized. And then people end up having cardiovascular situations going on. They have mental health concerns going on. They've got circulation issues going on because they're eating so much animal protein and fat that just because that glucose value doesn't look like it's moving, over time, it actually is creating insulin resistance. And not only that, but it's affecting your heart and your brain and your circulation and your energy level and everything else. So this holistic approach to what plant-based nutrition does is miraculous. It's not a new concept, honestly. We've had so much research on this for so long that we've been looking at the wrong thing. And that's what I grew up with, looking at the wrong thing. So when I changed my perspective and went after the research myself is when not just the blinking lights that went off, but a fire was lit. Because the thing is, a lot of people say this too in the diabetes world, that once they find out about plant-based nutrition, they get mad, like almost raging pissed would probably be more precise, because they think, why didn't anyone teach me this? I've been seeing doctors for decades. How come I didn't know? This is out here. What's the deal? And
I could have been eating oatmeals and potatoes for all these years.
Right. But instead I was like, oh, potatoes, I heard they're high carb and all of this horrible language around nutrition that isn't even accurate. Some of it coming out of dietitians. So we reframe our language, we reframe our perspective, reframes our entire body. And now you've got a whole new life to deal with. Now, what are you going to do that you feel good? That's like the amazing realization is you never felt this good in your life. And that's what I was dealing with after a while. What will I do now?
I love that. Well, I could do everything now. I could do everything now. So we talk a lot, obviously the Plant Trainers podcast, we talk a lot about plant-based nutrition on this podcast. And what I liked about you and what I picked up about you is that the idea of self-talk and how that helps to foster a good relationship with food and how that helps to foster better health within your body. So let's break it down and talk a little bit about what is self-talk. How would you explain that to somebody who kind of has heard it before but doesn't really get it yet?
Yeah, I think there could be interesting answers for self-talk depending on if this is just a therapist's world, even a coach's world. For me in the diabetes world, also because I'm also an indoor cycling instructor, kind of in that motivation when it comes to the physical and the mental and the emotional, is I know how self-talk really affected me. It affected my outlook on life. And there are a lot of things that affect the way that we talk to ourselves. Speaking for I think a lot of women in particular, we are so hard on ourselves. It's that inner dialogue that can always be going on, right? The inner dialogue. And so much of my life has been based on and judged by numbers, the value of my blood as a result of my nutrition. So you can imagine what kind of self-talk can come from, I shouldn't have eaten that. Look at my blood glucose now. Great. I screwed up. It's your fault. And that can bring on shame and self-hatred and that confusing anger of why did this happen to me? And I can't control this. So the only thing I have to get mad at is myself. And it's that vicious cycle. So with chronic conditions in particular, something that often gets left out of the equation where you've got self-talk over here is this cycle of emotional wellness and emotional health is always in the exam room with people that have chronic conditions. Even if the providers don't want to acknowledge it, it's there, it's standing right there. It's with that person because of their own judgment of their body. And if they feel like they're being judged by their doctors because of their glucose values, which is so common, right? Like you go in and what's the first thing that typically happens to us when we go to a doctor's office? It's a scale.
For your checkup. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like it's the scale, it's your weight. Oh my gosh, like terrifying. That right there. I'm a refuse to weigh person. I have been for many, many years because it will dictate my attitude potentially. It will potentially make me feel like you've weighed me today in the afternoon after a couple of meals. That is going to probably bother me. And I don't want it to, even as someone who's a dietitian that really practices positive self-talk and positive mindset, I can end up scaling back into my 16-year-old body in no time into that mindset of now I'm going to be super hard on myself. And I'm going to forget all of these healthy principles that I really try to practice just because I let that number bother me so much and let it identify my self-worth. So there's your self-talk definition in a sense is it is anything and everything we could be thinking about our body at any given point in time even if we can rationalize our way out of it, we could talk ourselves back into that ugly place with just about anything that influences us.
So I could just see this vicious circle within myself. 6 years ago, I was sick with adrenal fatigue, cortisol levels were off. I had bad inflammation problems. I had really bad brain fog. I can't even remember the word. A really bad brain fog, and I wasn't able to work. I was sleeping almost 18 hours a day. And there was so much negative self-talk because it was like, okay, so you're a nutritionist, you help people go plant-based, you've gotten them amazing results. You gotten people who have become only vegetarian off their insulin in 6 weeks, type 2 diabetics, right? Like these are the things that you do for people, yet you can't help yourself, Shoshana. So where do you get off helping other people? And then it's, okay, I'm spending all this time in bed. I'm not healing. What am I not doing in my life? Who am I not helping? I'm not out there helping people. I'm not doing extra for my kids. I'm not able to cook the meals that I used to be able to cook because I'm so sick. And then it's this whole vicious circle going around and around and around. And it keeps yourself in that eye of the tornado, not allowing yourself to break free and start to think positive again, because there kind of is no positive left.
Yeah, it's just the way that you describe that. Isn't interesting how we have different stories, but we've been in that headspace. It's easy to identify when you are in that headspace. And
we're just going to take a little break here because I want to share with you that growth is something that happens for everyone and every business. And we've been going through a lot of personal and professional growth here at Plant Trainers, and we want to stay connected with you. That's why we're giving away our plant-based comfort food ebook that's worth $14.99 for free at our website at planttrainers.com, or by clicking the link in the show notes. Click on that, get on our newsletter, because we're going to be making some serious changes and you need to be aware of what's going on. We look forward to connecting with you there. And now back to the show.
In my work, and not just work, but just the conversations I've had with people that have diabetes all over the country, emails that I get, or someone that reads my book and says, you're speaking my language, and here's when it was very obvious. That's how my book even got finished, is I wasn't sure that I wanted to put my story out there. And I kept having these breaks and like, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. I'd get another story from someone that had a really similar difficult upbringing like I did, or had a story where they needed to overcome their own themselves as their greatest barrier, or even their doctors as this greatest barrier. And that's where I really see is, if potentially our greatest barrier to achieving the health that we dream of is ourselves and our own self-talk, that's priority one. That's the root of pain. The root of our emotions can be the thing that holds us back the most. So we've got to look at it. We've got to stare it in the face and really pull it forward, talk about it, or we're always going to diet ourselves into a position where we stop looking at the thing that needs the most attention. It's probably our emotional health and our self-talk.
So then what do we do to face that? How do we look it in the face? How do we make progress there?
Yeah, I think for me, when I realized how big of a deal this was, I started asking different questions to people that I worked with. And this was type 1, type 2, prediabetes. This was anyone. It was various ages of women. I have some really interesting case studies just to see what happens when you prompt people with different questions to help them get out of their frame of thinking. And it has to do with inner dialogue. We can rewrite that. We can think different. We can think anything we want in any given moment in time. Look at, what our dreams do. Our dreams can go in all sorts of different directions, which can really be a higher power of thinking. But these moments of deep thinking and with inner dialogue is first being aware of it. So my question came from, tell me about your relationship with food, or would you be willing to tell me about your relationship with food? And I already know when I've got someone with years of experience living with diabetes in front of me that I'm going to get some deep answers. It was, of course, I came from the low carb world, or I was diagnosed 15 years ago, and I hear shame in their answers. I hear lots of restriction in their answers, yo-yo dieting, lots of medications potentially in their answers, where they'll say things like, I really want to get off my medications, but I don't think there's any hope for that. And I might ask, well, what led you to believe that you don't get to have this goal? What led you to believe that? Sometimes I get, well, I asked my doctor about plant-based nutrition and they laughed at me. I've heard that. I asked for a referral to a dietitian and I didn't get one. Or I met a dietitian that I didn't like and I'm never going back. So I've heard all kinds of things, and that can translate into, I took a spin class I hated, I'm never going back. I've heard that plenty of times too. Personal trainer, doctors, all these things. So negative experience can dictate our attitude, and we can sometimes think that everyone is like this. So a series of questions is one thing, and knowing that on the inside, you are looking for support. It is not easy to do any of these things alone. So these types of questions from someone that is ready to handle your answers, some type of a coach, some kind of a, registered dietitian, maybe it is a doctor. There are all sorts of people out there with great experiences with diabetes, educators, but it takes one bad experience to potentially scar someone for many, many years so that they don't end up overcoming these barriers until they're so beyond frustrated that they don't know what else to do.
I think that there's also the aspect of, do I want to get better? And what happens if I do? Because I see this a lot, right? With the supplements and cell restorative generation that we do with people, there are people who say the same thing to us. Well, I've tried everything else. I don't think this will work for me, or I'm too sensitive, so it's not going to work for me. And they're asking for help, but they're not ready for the help. And those are the people who, not always, but often will, get to week 2 or week 3 and say, this isn't for me, but they haven't given their body a chance to acclimate. They haven't gotten past that point. And what is the cost benefit of getting better? If you get better, then will you have to be able to restrain yourself differently in a restaurant? Or will you not get the sympathy of friends and family? Or do you now have an excuse to sleep more or rest more or watch TV or not work as hard or not work out because working out plays with your numbers and you don't know how to manage that? What's going to happen if you are better? Or maybe you're just so used to being where you're at that you're scared of getting better. That could be holding you back too. So if you're not really ready to be better, everything else is going to be an excuse and everything else is going to get in the way. And that's a mindset that can really hinder you.
Yeah, that's major. It's a huge mind shift to go from something that you're used to. We're such creatures of habit. As human beings, we're basically built to fear anything that relates to change. We're wired to want to protect ourselves in every which way. It's just the human nature to be a little bit apprehensive of anything that could be different, even if it's better for us. Even if we see something like, I really think that I would feel better if this or that. And with that note of uncertainty, a question I started asking was, hang on a second, I'd kind of slow someone down for a minute if they were going down that wheel of, I could sense that hopelessness of tunneling themselves into the past of where they were when we were trying to move forward, is actually to ask, if you woke up tomorrow in your ideal state of health, what would it look like? Would it look like something? Would it feel like something? Would it be an emotion? What are we really going after here? And underneath so much of that was an emotional pain point that we sit in, and we're so used to feeling that hurt that if it's not there, we're different people. So we fear the difference. The relationship with food question, I get so much trauma from that. And a lot of times at that point, my answer is, I might be the last person that you need to talk to right now. Do you have support? You have support at home? Do you have a therapist? Because the story you just told me that happened to you when you were 10 years old is a story to share to someone who can help you heal here and in your heart. Way beyond the food at this point. Food's going to help heal so much. But what we've done is we flipped the other side of the coin. The side of the coin that we always focus on tends to be that physical. Like, I want to have some physical outcomes here. I want to lose weight. I want to see the proof. I can eat differently and I will exercise. And that's some of that physical. But I ask people, we got to flip the coin now, because you're moving into phase 2 of wellness. And phase 2 is the hardest part. It really is very difficult to look at the things that hurt us, that are the reasons why we turn to food for healing, the reasons why we say such horrible things to ourselves, like, I'm in pain and I'm going for the chocolate. I'm going for the box of chips, the crackers, the things that take us out of that moment of pain, because we can be mindless when we're eating. And when someone does that, and they know it's because they were hurting and they wanted to ignore that thing that takes them back into that horrible space, is the food. And then they're done with the food, and now they're shaming themselves for that. So it's just another cycle of looking at, here we are back to the root of the pain. Here we are. We'll always be looking to heal.
So what you're suggesting is it's not about, for emotional eaters, finding something else to do, like putting your energy towards exercising or putting your energy towards, I don't know, going to sleep or distracting yourself. But it's about facing your demons and dealing with that under root cause, which a lot of people might not even know and might not even realize. It might be something that you have to do on a subconscious level, but you have to do the work, or it may never go away, even if you do take your energy and focus it somewhere else. Because that was kind of going to be my question. What would you recommend to people to do when they do feel like they're going to emotionally eat? But the biggest answer is do the work.
Yeah, it's interesting because that coin, there's two sides of the coin, but it's still one coin. So it's a partnership. Yeah, it's a partnership. I had mentioned just being really ticked off, finally figuring out that plant-based nutrition could have potentially saved my life or given me a better life sooner than when I came to it. I had lived 15 years with this idea that carbs were the worst thing on the planet, to then eating more carbohydrates than I ever have in my entire life. And I take less insulin for it. Imagine that mind, of what that can do, right? That concept is so hard for people to sit with. And it's the sitting with it. It's the asking the questions. It's the how does this functionally work? And that's where the education comes into play with, well, here is actually how high fiber nutrition works. This is actually what saturated fat does to the body. This is actually what diabetes is as a result of insulin resistance. Have you ever heard these words before? And usually it's not. Back in the clinic, it's constantly, add more medication, take more insulin, eat less carbs. It's this kind of nonsense that's never, ever even worked. But in the clinic, there isn't this backing off and taking assessment as to why are my patients not getting where they need to be? And it's because you keep saying the same stuff to them year after year after year. They're not acknowledging the root of this problem, which may have nothing to do with the food, but the food is the soothing mechanism. So getting someone to that healthier point, for my story, I knew nutrition was a major target because my relationship with food wasn't good. My relationship with my body wasn't good, but I was seeing it for face value. I was seeing it for, here's what I look like and I'm not happy. Here's how I feel and I'm not happy. But it wasn't, where is this coming from as much of? So once I got onto the plants and I started realizing that I'm reacting really, really well to this, then I started to discover that there's evidence-based science to explain why I'm physiologically having a better experience in life right now based on the nutrients I'm putting in. But then I was getting this energy level that I knew I needed something to do with. And I always wanted to be more fit and athletic and physical. And I realized then that me going to the gym and getting on a bike or outside and taking a walk or cycling or anything has almost more to do with mental health support for me. And the physical benefit is a side effect of the exercise. Like that became the side effect. I needed to exercise for my mind because I was still so angry about everything. So anger and like revenge and vengeance, that can be a motivator, certainly, as now I stand in front of a room full of a professional audience and I tell them about plant-based nutrition or emotional health or shifting our language and our communication towards people with diabetes. And they have such a positive reaction. So my anger almost doesn't work anymore. I have to do something with it. I have to use it. But now I'm getting such a positive reaction from the fact that I'm asking people to change that I know they're ready. So I think I've shifted into something completely different to do with that emotional health. It's much more positive and optimistic now than it was once upon a time. But you can see how like I went through this huge journey of just all of these things in my body that I knew, here's what's happening positively. What am I going to do with this? How does it relate to my personal impression and my professional impression? How am I going to put these worlds together? That's been just this amazing experience.
And that's exactly what it is. It's a journey, and it's a journey for everyone. And you're doing such amazing work out there. And I think that, when we talk about root cause, like you're grassroots talking to the other doctors, talking to the other nutritionists, dietitians, everybody else out there, so that they're not laughing at their patients when they come in and they say, well, what about plant-based? They're not just looking blindly at whatever research I'll use that word loosely, is put on the front of the magazine or on the talk show that week, that it's evidence-based. And I think that all of that doesn't even really matter. What matters is what happens to your body when you do it. How do you feel when you do it? And are you doing it properly? Because a lot of people will go plant-based and say, oh, I was dizzy, or, oh, I wasn't feeling well, or, oh, it didn't work for me. But we're so used to dieting, and we're so used to our salads being the side salad. Like if I go to a restaurant, just a regular everyday restaurant, and I have a salad, that's not enough food for me. So yeah, I'm going to be moody, and I'm not going to get all my nutrients, and I'm going to be lightheaded, because we need to learn how to eat properly and satiate ourselves. So putting that information out there and letting people go on their journey to finding that is really key. What do you recommend for anybody just, starting out, who wants to have a better relationship with food, who wants to have a better mindset, and who wants to just do better, whether they're already eating plant-based or not?
Gosh, I had mentioned, sitting with that pain a bit, sitting with yourself in those moments where you think you're going to turn to something that may not be super healthy for you. If it's a substance or it's a food, if it's wine, it's these things. It's hard to be present in the moment when you are emotionally affected by something stressful. It's really hard to stop. That's where intuitive eating becomes like impossible, is stopping yourself in the moment and going through that, 5 steps to kind of becoming more self-aware, is because you're so overwhelmed by that stress and that anxiety that you're reacting to that thing. So if people can have a date with themselves once a week, like a 10-minute check-in. If you go to a yoga class, if you have any kind of a ritual around self-care, please build it in. Yoga classes are so great. Breathwork classes are so great. Something where you want to show up to this thing. You can do them online for free. I want people to figure out ways where access is very simple and easy for them. Finding a workout that you love is key, because we have got to be physically active. It's one of the things that I say have to about. I think physical activity is non-negotiable. Just because we can walk for 10 minutes a day after eating, it does not need to be boot camp. So sometimes changing our mindset around exercise is what we're really looking for. So I'm saying some things that kind of hit the nail on the head. This is our 10 minutes of self check-in time, where we have that date with ourselves every week, where we may have some bullet points to write down, really simple things. And they may start with, I want to do this week. I want to try this week, versus I'm going to, or I should, or I have to. That's where we get ourselves into hot water, taking on too much, feeling guilty then if we don't hit our list. So lists are always ideal for someone. That's another thing that I will ask people, if tracking and writing food down, for example, if that is a safe space. That is not a safe space. Stop it now. There's a time and space to go to that position where we can look and analyze food a little more closer. I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, and I could see her in front of me just having this reaction to even the thoughts that she was trying to get out of her mind about the numbers that she tracks. And she's had successful weight loss. She's trying to prevent herself from having prediabetes. So far, so good, because it's in her family history. And she's feeling good about things. And I can see her telling me how great she feels. And then suddenly flipping in this moment about, but I have to track my food. And when I track my food, I feel like I'm not getting enough protein because I've gone plant-based. Maybe it's not the protein. Maybe it's something else. And I go, whoa, we're going to stop tracking. Do you want to delete the app off your phone? Just now. Get this thing out of your face. You can come back to it if you find it to be helpful. But right now, you just talked yourself out of all the great things you've been doing. So bullet list, 10 minutes, check-in time. Find that date with yourself to slow things down and figure out what you want for yourself. So many people out there have a hard time answering what they want for themselves, because the kids are first, the husband's first, the house is first. And I got to say, it's shocking to hear people say that their job is first, that their coworkers and pleasing them are more important than caring for themselves. Coin here. There's a couple sides, right? But it's all a part of the same thing. So if you don't take care of you, no one gets to be taken care of. Built into that also with another bullet point is support, asking the family. If the family is a barrier to you getting into that healthier space, it's time for a serious conversation. you get to have support and you get to negotiate that, or you get to demand it. It depends on who you're speaking to, but those boundaries, right? The boundaries are so important. I know they can be a lot harder to talk to a boss about. However, I've learned that in healthcare, that open honesty and being clear about, this is what affects my performance at home. This is what affects my performance on the job. I've got to leave earlier so I can get to the gym. There's a class that I've promised myself I'm going to take, and I will be a better employee as a result of that, I assure you. So being your best and brightest self-advocate is a must. We have to be our best and brightest self-advocates. The diabetes world taught me that. No one's going to advocate for me. No one's going to run my endocrinology appointment like I'm going to. But as a kid, of course, I don't have that voice. So I found my voice, and now I'm able to say, hey, doc, here's what I need today. Here's what I want to talk about, and here's the direction I'm going in. What can you tell me about this? And no, I'm not going to get on the scale. So, setting boundaries and declaring what you want for yourself. Just set 10 minutes at a time. And what you don't want, yeah.
And what you don't want, yeah.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that as well. So we could go in a lot of different ways. There isn't like a 10-step rule book, certainly to that, but the time for yourself and making the declaration, what's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many good points there. And you don't have to do them all. Start with one and move forward. Lauren, you've been a wealth of information today. I think that we had a conversation that's really going to make people think about what their relationship with food is and what stories they're telling themselves. If somebody wants to learn more about you or reach out, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, my name.com. So laurenplunkett.com, pretty clear. I've got quite a bit written on my website just to hear more about my story. There are some workshops and things that I do, but I really welcome people to just email me. And if you've got questions, just shoot them over. There's a lot of things that I help people sort through with just simple ideas that aren't going to cost you a thing. When someone has diabetes, particularly type 1, and they just need someone to really hear them who's been through the same experience, I'm always happy to be that person. At Lauren Plunkett Health is also a handle for me. Also, Instagram for me is a lot of cat pictures, so just be ready. Yeah, so cat therapy, I should have put that one on the list too, is animal therapy and getting outside and breathing that in. That's also part of the love for yourself that you can get.
Amazing. Cat therapy. Love it. We're going to end there. Thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast today. And I encourage everybody to check us both out on Instagram and definitely comment about your favorite part about this podcast under Lauren's episode. We are looking forward to talking to you again. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time and have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.